it's not ending. It's not like we can recognize an in-between of, oh, this happened yesterday and now things are going to be good. And it will be a while, and we have to work on that. So let us hold all these catastrophes and sorrows in our heart for a moment. And let us meditate for a bit. Let's put our feet spiritually or physically on the ground below us. And let us think about the tops of our heads that touch the rest of the universe. We are in between those two. Let us feel that in between. Let us relax our shoulders, get the tension out of our joints, and have our hands in a relaxed position. Let us not think specifically about any sorrows, but let them flow through our minds. And let us breathe in and out at our own pace. Spirit of life, be with us in this day, this first Sunday of August, when we reflect on the things that are happening and the in-between, between good times we may have experienced in the past and hopefully good times we are moving towards. We are still working on the beloved community. May we continue to do so. And may we, in the process of doing so, be able to interact with one another, not just those who are like us, but those who are very different and hold different ideas from those we have. Let us be able, may we be able to be open to them. And may our compassion encompass not just those close to us, those in our congregations and our communities, but also those who are very different from us in any way. Amen, and blessed be. My comments today have to do with the in-betweenness of things. To our congregation, the month of July really is an in-between month, since no services are held in the sanctuary in July for a couple of reasons, not the least of which is the intense heat of that month. We hosted a wedding in the sanctuary, as Karen knows, and it was quite warm during that lovely event. In fact, every month is an in-between, between two other months. So what makes August so special? August is kind of special in our culture because it has a lot of in-betweens. To be in-between is not the same as being mixed and being interdependent, although it's related to that. But in-betweenness is a space or a situation that is not one and yet not another. It's not a situation where one thing is ending and the other is beginning. There is that space in between. It connotes a situation or a time where transformation is possible. It may be a situation of staying put for a while, or one where we live in the moment, without being concerned about what came before and what will come after. And if we think about it as a space, It's what we call a liminal space, the betweenness, the things in the margins. It may be a space where ambiguity exists, where something is not one and yet not another. And it's transforming maybe from one to the other. If we think about just the material ways, there are many material ways in which August has a lot of in-betweens. Here's one example, and I just read about this. I thought it was fascinating. I thought I knew about monarch butterflies. I mean, they're all over the place, right? But there's an in-between related to one type of monarch butterfly I found out. Some of you, I'm sure, know this, but I didn't. That one type is the type of monarch that comes out of the chrysalis, its hard shell, rather early in the summer. And then those monarchs die after 2 or 3 months, like around this time. And then there are those that come out of the chrysalis later, in the month of August. And those are the migrating variety. They hatch the following spring, so they live a lot longer. And August is that liminal space between the two types of monarchs. I had no idea about this. So it does help to kind of think about what do we mean by in-betweens, and all these things came to me, and all these things I read about. I'm not going to tell you about other examples right now, maybe just 1 or 2 later. But there are those obvious things that I already mentioned, things that are in between the vacations that are ending and the school or the work that is beginning again. And there's that cooling of August. We notice it this week compared to last week. Yes, we can feel some of it these days. And that cooling kind of marks the end of the summer season and the beginning of fall. It's around the corner. And those of you who are gardeners know that summer annuals and perennials are beginning to show the need for dividing and separating and removing. And then there are the fall perennials and fall flowers that are soon going to show their vivid colors, like purple asters and the mums that come in all those colors. Reds, purples, other colors. Even white is very nice in between. It's not very useful to kind of choose and say, oh, we like one of these situations better than the other one. I like summer, I like fall. It doesn't really matter that we do that, because there is an endless cycle between them. They will always come back, one hopes. And August provides us with this time where there's sort of a holding pattern. Oh, it's not yet school. Oh, summer is not yet over. We're in this holding pattern right now. A little bit of both is existing in this in-between. So this summer I kept track of all kinds of in-betweens, getting ready for today, and some of them were quite silly. I'll just tell you one of them. That's the last one. The ultimate one was something that I observed when I was in Scotland for a week. I just came back from there. And the Scots, as most of you know, have this special dish. Some say it's in between food and garbage, but they have this special dish called haggis, which is basically sheep offal that is cooked in a sheep's stomach. Yeah, if you think that's gross, the Scots, the British, the English do that too. They often eat this stuff called black pudding, and what makes it black is that it's really blood sausage. And now I found out last week that there's a new delicacy. It is called blaggis. It's a mixture of haggis and blood pudding, and the next time you go to Scotland, you can try it, but I doubt that it's going to catch on. So I was making these lists of in-betweens, and eventually, after I made some rather long and sometimes silly mental lists of material ways in which this month has a lot of in-betweens, my mind turned away from August specifically and towards in-betweens that are of a non-material kind. And this brought me to reflect on our Unitarian Universalist principles and values in relation to in-betweens. And I'm going to do that the next time I'm in the pulpit as well. It's interesting to me that our 6 values, which some of us know by heart and others don't, and it doesn't really matter, but some of them are clearly moral values, while others relate more to the overall ethic of all the values together, with love at the center, which sort of define how we act as, or believe we should act as Unitarian Universalists. If I think about one that's specifically a moral value, generosity. Generosity is a moral value. Compassion is a moral value. And there are several that relate to these values or to the principles when they were configured in a different way. There's a difference between moral values and ethics, and it's kind of interesting that we mention values without saying moral values when we talk about UU values, and it's interesting that we don't call it an ethic. I think it's partly because Unitarian Universalists don't want to be seen too much as humanists, because the humanists have an ethics, a set of ethics in their manifestos that they regularly produce. And those manifestos are the humanist ethic. And our values with love at the center, they are our ethic. Because an ethic is a philosophy, it's a stance, it's a way of thinking that is not just individual. Like when I say, I'm not going to ever kill anything, or something of that sort. My ethic might be related to my profession. For example, if I write articles, I should not plagiarize, or I might be kicked out of an association if I do. You know, there are sometimes penalties attached to it. And for Unitarian Universalists, those values together, or the principles together, and the values with love at the center, that is something that isn't just personal, it relates to a group that believes in certain things or in certain behaviors, in a covenant. So a covenant is really an ethic. So ethics are related to a group or a community. And the ethic of love at the center, that's an example. And it does imply certain individual moral values like honesty and generosity and several others. Now, if you follow an ethic or you believe in an ethic, it doesn't necessarily simplify your life overly, because ethical decisions are not always straightforward. In fact, they're seldom straightforward. There's an in-between in ethical decisions, a need to accept that there is ambiguity between alternative actions. The in-between is a liminal space where the established rules of ethics don't provide clear guidance. Some of you, or maybe all of you, know that example of the trolley problem. Okay, it's a little exercise, a philosophical, ethical exercise, where you're asked to imagine a trolley that's going down a track. You have the controls in your hand, and the trolley is getting out of hand, it's running amok, and it's going down the hill. I imagine San Francisco is running down the hill, and you can either make it turn to the left so that it doesn't crash in the ocean, or you can make it turn to the right. But if you turn to the right, oh, it's going to kill your best friend. And if it turns to the left, then it's going to kill 5 people you don't know. What are you going to do? That's an ethical problem, right? I have no answer for it. The idea of that kind of problem is that there is no clear-cut answer. So the in-between in those situations is a liminal space where the established rules of ethics don't provide clear guidance. You have to look at the specifics. Well, who are these 5 people? You know? Things like that. The specific situations and circumstances must be taken into account. And they're often nuanced. I mean, there could be people where one of them saves us from all these problems that we're experiencing in the world, and we would be killing that person? No. Would you rather kill your mother? No. So it's all very difficult. So the specific situations must be evaluated, and one cannot solely rely on those predefined principles or sets of values, like, I will not tell a lie. Sometimes we do maybe have to tell a lie. It depends on the situation. And in the situation of I will not kill, well, at least one sheep was killed to make the haggis, that is this delicacy in Scotland. So killing is going on. The Buddhists have an interesting way of looking at this. In Buddhism, the in-between or the ambiguity calls for what they use the term skillful means to describe those situations, where it's not just being nice and friendly. Sometimes you have to be tough, and when is that, and how do you do it? Well, that's how you apply the skillful means, which is really a set of adaptive methods to negotiate our moral principles in real-life situations. To a Buddhist, it would be, what skillful means can I use to help this person or this group of people to reach enlightenment, or something like that. To a Unitarian Universalist, it might be, how do I negotiate, how I tackle my daily engagement with our values and principles in such a way that I get us closer to building the beloved community. So it all depends on the situation. Interpersonal relationships. They also exist in this ethical in-between space. When you think about interpersonal relationships between 2 people, both individuals, when they relate to one another, they have some vulnerabilities and they have some power that they can exert on each other. And how do they negotiate that? How do we find ways, the use of language, proper distancing, and other methods to interact with one another in a positive way? So there's an ethical challenge here in making space for the other, not giving up too much space of our own, so there's that in-between space for the other or the others to be different, and yet to be able to speak, to be heard, and for us to be heard. That's the in-between space in relationships. And I was thinking about how to apply that in my own life when I meet somebody who is in that political realm where they have very different ideas from me. And I'm thinking, how will I do that? I have some people in my family who are sort of very different. And my approach has been avoidance, but that doesn't really get us anywhere. So how can we work better? And in relation to these interrelationships, I read a very interesting article. It's an article on love, because after all, we see that word a lot in describing Unitarian Universalism. You know, we have love at the center, and people say, "What are you talking about?" You know, or some will say, "Oh, that's nice," or they will say, "Oh, obviously, don't all religions have something like that?" So you can start to discuss it. But the article I was reading about love was written by two people. They are not very well-known people, and you don't have to remember the names, but their names are Laura Candiotti and Henne de Jager. And their article that they wrote has the title Love in Between. So obviously that was going to intrigue me for today. This article was published in 2021, and it appears in a special issue of the Journal of Ethics, a very interesting journal to read. And the special issue was devoted to the ethics of love. I wondered how the idea of love in between might relate to our 6UU values that have love at the center, and that are all interconnected. So I was thinking, does this mean that if the UU ethic of love is followed as interaction between people easier? Like, could I talk more easily to certain people in my family that I'm trying to avoid these days? And well, no. When I'm thinking about my personal interactions with people in my circle of acquaintances who have very different opinions about community, government, politics, social policies, entitlements, and so on, how can I get closer? And how can they get closer to me? How can we interact? I wanted to see if this article could offer some guidance here for this in-between, which seems to be a big in-between. And this is where it becomes really interesting. Basically, the authors begin with romantic love, which we all think about here and there, and the expressions that are based on that kind of love. Expressions like, I love you, right? The words we love to hear and say. There's nothing in between there. I love you, you love me, we're together. That kind of love is a unity. I love you, you love me, nothing in between. That reminds me of that song by Dolly Parton and is it Kenny Rogers, you know, Islands in the Stream, nothing in between. I don't know the rest of the lyrics, but it seemed appropriate here. But when you think about relational love, as opposed to this romantic love, relational love is something else. It's an engagement, an encounter. And the authors of that article clarify that it is a continuing process of becoming, of coming in relation. Maybe that's the work I haven't done with these specific acquaintances, or haven't done yet. And that work exists in the in-between. It involves participation in making sense, in understanding, in building knowledge, in moving on, in building a beloved community. So they say, and I thought this was fascinating, instead of understanding it as, I love you, it is more like, I love to you. That's more relational. There is work there. You love to me. Is it then possible, I was wondering, that such an understanding of love in the in-between can help us interact not just with people of our own congregations, who more often than not are largely like us, but also with those whose ideas are very different, even polar opposites from our ideas. And there are many people I can think of whose ideas are totally opposite to mine, and to ours maybe. And I was thinking about, I love to you. May we think of the love at the center of our 6 values. You know, it's love at the center. May we think about that love as being of the form, I love to you, as opposed to I love you in this unity. Is it then love in the in-between? It's then a dynamic, participatory kind of love. And that looked very hopeful to me. And not as insipid as just thinking about, oh, love at the center. You know, it's a relational kind of love. So I would like us to try this out here and say it together. I love to you.
I love to you.
Yeah, sounds a little strange, but you know, let's keep that in mind. And may it be so. While we think about that, let us be ready for singing our closing hymn. That is going to be number 163.